I'm finding that quarantine is a little bit like motherhood in the sense that you don't really know what quarantine is going to be like until you actually do it. And you also don't do it perfectly. And you also, like motherhood in a quarantine, you are figuring it out as you go along. And probably most importantly, you bring all of your emotional baggage and all of your issues to the experience, which has its ups and its downs. So what I'm finding, I really only kind of started quarantine on Friday, which I think was sort of like right on time with a lot of the people, right on pace with a lot of people I know. And by Saturday, I was feeling very isolated. It was only 24 hours. I'm kind of in my own situation, which is that I am divorced and I only got into my new house in September. So I've only been living alone with my two teenagers since September, and the house really is just now starting to feel like home, and it's kind of up and running. And I've never been through a pandemic, which I think most of us can say. I think all of us can say we've never been through a pandemic, and not this kind of pandemic. I've never been quarantined except for, a little bit by Hurricane Sandy and a little bit by 9/11, but it wasn't official. And so all of this is new, but it's especially new because I'm alone. And so alone. By Saturday, I was like, I'm so alone. What's going to happen? I was freaking out. And so I called my two best friends, and they're both divorced women. And I wanted to go for a walk with someone. I was like, well, I just need adult contact. We'll stay 6 feet away. So the thing about 6 feet away is that I think that's like 3 feet. So 6 feet's double that. That's a pretty far distance. And I'm not even sure if 6 feet's the right number, but 3, 6, just away, right? So when you hang out with people, even if you're walking in the woods, you're supposed to stay away from them. And so I was trying to get one of them to come for a walk with me, and I didn't. And then I got really into my head about, people have something called a quarantine shortlist. And this is something I completely made up. But in my mind on Saturday, it was that everyone had a quarantine shortlist, and a quarantine shortlist means the people that you love the most and that are meaningful to you and that you would go through anything for. And in my head, everybody was hanging out with those people on Saturday and Saturday night, and kind of creating like a little germ pool that they would feel safe to go through the entire next month with. And this was in my head. I'm not saying this was happening. But when something's happening in my head, it might as well be happening. So I nurtured this paranoia. And it's not new to me. Like, I didn't have bridesmaids in my wedding because years before I was even engaged, I was worried about who would my bridesmaids be. So I clearly have issues around like inner circle or trust or who's in your inner circle. And I had friends that helped me get married, and I had a lot of friends at my wedding, but I didn't have bridesmaids. I didn't want to define it. Probably because I was afraid. Who knows? Who knows why? But I also used to always wonder, if I died, who would be at my funeral? Because that's kind of an expanded short list. Hopefully it wouldn't be a short list. Hopefully there'd be plenty of people at my funeral. But, or probably depends on how long you live. That is my observation. The list does get shorter. Anyway, quarantine short list. So that's what was rattling around in my brain on Saturday. And so then by Sunday morning, when my friend finally decided she could come for a walk with me, she was just walking into a huge booby trap because I was all keyed up to have my feelings hurt. So she pulled up in her Jeep, and she was like, well, why don't you follow me and in your car, and I'll go in my car. And somehow that made me feel very hurt. And of course that's good quarantine protocol. We're not going to go in the same car, because if we go in the same car, then we're not 6 feet away from each other. And then there's germs all over the steering wheel, and people are coughing in an inside space, but nobody was coughing either because they're sick, but apparently that doesn't matter. So it was smart of her, but I took it personally. And I cried. I was like, fine, I'll take my car, you take your car. I haven't seen anyone in 2 days. It was a mess. I was crying the whole way to the park. Then I put my sunglasses on and tried to hide it from her. But luckily, we talked it through, and I got some sense rattled into me, because in a quarantine, you don't drive around in cars with other people. And I explained to her this whole theory that I had made up about quarantine shortlist, which I can't say that she disabused me of the notion, because she was hanging out with people on Saturday night. But I got over it. So, and now no one's hanging out with anyone. Now it's, nuclear, at least where I live, we're kind of nuclear family only. So that's the ironic thing, is that going through the this quarantine, it's going to be me and my ex-husband and my 2 kids. And so that's just not how I plan to spend the next month, with spending the only other adult that I'm really going to have contact within 6 feet with is my ex. You just never know, right? I mean, we're going to have another bonding experience. And I thought we were done with bonding experiences, but we're going to have another one. And I'm hoping it's going to go well. So welcome to, I don't know, Quarantine 2020, the emotional future. I wish myself luck. And you too.